So you want to learn how to write a Twitter bot. The first step is probably to know some sort of programming language. For this tutorial, we'll be using Python to write a Twitter bot. And for that to work, the first thing that we do is write pseudocode. So pseudocode is basically our way of writing a list of steps that we want to carry out for our code. So step 1, we have to log on to Twitter. Step 2, for this tutorial, we'll be making a follow bot. So we want to find new tweets. Step 3, we want to like new tweets. And then after we like the new tweet, we have to follow the user, because that's how you gain those followers, when they follow you back. So after we follow them, we want to store their name, save it. So we want to store their name and then save it somewhere we can test, we can look back at it. So after that, that's kind of the gist of it. We don't want to follow too many people, so we're going to want to unfollow users that don't follow back after 1 hour. That's fair if they're new tweets. Okay. Log on to Twitter, find new tweets. How are we going to do that? Under hashtags, or search terms, rather. We're going to like them, we're going to follow the user, and then we're going to store their name, and then check back on it later, and then unfollow them if they haven't followed us back. And then if they did follow us back, we want to save the names of those who followed us back, and we're just going to keep it like that. We just want to save it somewhere where we know who is basically following us back from the script, from the bot. I forgot, after this, we can also mute them. By muting them, you will not see their tweets on your feed. Therefore, it basically is kind of like a fake follow, almost in a sense that it raises your following count, but you'll never actually see any of their tweets. And basically we want to write the lists to a file in case of a error, just in case of some bug in the code, or our computer turns off or something like that. We're gonna want to have somewhere the usernames are stored when the program crashes. I've worked, in my experience working with Twitter bots, sometimes when the program crashes and you have like a bunch of liked tweets, it just takes too much time to go back and unlike them all without actually unfollowing or unliking people that you accidentally didn't mean to. Okay, so that seems like pretty much everything we need to do. We can add on to this if we need to. So once you have your pseudocode, the next step is basically figure out like what you're going to use, like do some research, figure out what you're going to use to implement your solution. So for Twitter, they have this thing called an API, and an API is basically a direct connection into Twitter, and what that allows you to do is to carry out actions such as a bot against your own account under their own certain limitations. And you don't want to obviously break their limitations because that's how you get your account banned. So following their limitations and doing it all like on the up and up is completely fine and not against Twitter's terms of service. So creating a bot like this is not against the rules or anything like that. So you should have no issues when making a bot or using something like this on Twitter. For other platforms, the terms of service may vary, so obviously you want to do your own research when working with certain platforms. So for Python, the solution that we're going to be using is called Tweepy. And Tweepy is a Python library for accessing the Twitter API, and I don't know why I opened it up on that. I can open it up on here. But we can pull up the documentation over here in my little side browser. And so Tweepy is basically a Python wrapper for the Twitter API. And what that allows us to do is if you install the Tweepy module, you can use the methods and the functions defined in the Tweepy module to use Twitter in your own usage. So this is basically the starter script called Hello Tweepy, and it says this example will download your home timeline tweets and print each one to their text to the console, or print each one of their texts to the console. Twitter requires all requests to use OAuth for authentication. The authentication tutorial goes into more detail about authentication. So this is kind of what I talked about. The API provides a way to connect into the backend, and it can accept various parameters and return responses, which is basically carrying out certain actions on Twitter, such as liking or tweeting or favoriting, or that's basically the same thing as liking or retweeting, I guess, in a sense. And models are basically I would relate it to an array as a sort, as where you have like a user, for example. So say at Apple, like the company Apple, and they have a certain amount of employees, or for their Twitter, I guess they'd have a certain amount of followers. They'd have 1,000 or whatever, how many followers they have, and then they have the date created, which is the date that their account was created, and that would just return like a simple date. Basically, it's a list of data that's returned rather than just one code, and then you can manipulate certain pieces of models. So you can look at the follower count of a certain user, or you can look at whether or not you are following them, or whether or not they're following you. Okay, so this is just the starter script, so we don't need this. This is basically this line number 9 and 10, which says for tweet in public tweets print tweet.text. This is basically saying for the tweets in our timeline, we're going to print out the tweet to the console. So we don't need to do that. We can also remove that. But these 3 lines right here, these are important. And these are basically our connection into Twitter. Since I've already made this, I'm going to copy these variables over, but these variables are what you're going to be using to connect to the Twitter API. So when you have your Twitter account, there's a link you can visit, and it's like dev.twitter.com/apps. Let's open it up. So developer.twitter.com/n/apps/create. And you can go there and you can create your app, and then you'll be able to get these 4 tokens, the consumer key and the consumer secret, and then the access token and the access token secret. And with these, you'll be able to connect to your own Twitter account and then manipulate the Twitter API using your own account. So after this long tangent, what do we have? Basically, we have our whole setup for connecting into Twitter. So this is step 1, logging into Twitter. So this right here is basically where we log into Twitter. So step 2 is finding new tweets under hashtags and certain terms. So to do this, what we can do is we want to figure out how we find new tweets. So while we can go through the documentation and say code snippets, no, that's not going to have what we want. Cursor tutorial. Okay, here we go. So basically, for using Twitter, when you want to search for something, what you want to do is call a cursor. So what a cursor is, as we can see over here, it says we can pass parameters into the cursor constructor method, which basically is a list that collects multiple tweets or multiple users as such. So we're going to define a search function, and this search function is going to be tweepy.cursor. So this is that cursor constructor, and we're going to be running the search, or we're going to be running the function api.search. So this first parameter is basically saying that we want to search on Twitter, and then this Q is basically saying what do we want to search for. So for this example, what I had copied before was from a variable, but you would just put some text here. It would be a string. So if I wanted to, for example, search follow back, I would just put in Q equals follow back in quotation marks because it's a string. And then result type. Result type is basically when you're searching with api.search, you have different kinds of results. You have like the top tweets, and you have the latest tweets, and you have people as well. So when you're using that, we're going to be using the most recent tweets, and this is basically anyone that has the term follow back, or if I even put a space here, these 2 words together or separate, if they are found in the tweet, they will be pulled up when you run this search. And then lang equals English. That's basically just a check to make sure that the tweets that you are pulling up are not like written in a separate language. If you had a different language, then you could write whatever you wanted there. And then .items is the amount of tweets that you are going to pull. It doesn't really matter in my API testing, as long as you're not doing it too frequently. So we'll just do 25 for this example, and then we'll work our way up when we're done with our testing. So we don't want to necessarily search under just one term. So how can we find a way to basically search under different terms? Well, we can create a list. So I'm going to create a new list, and it's going to be called terms. And a list is defined with these brackets. And what a list basically is like an array. Basically, those constructors that I was telling you about, when you have like @Apple, then you have the amount of followers, whether or not you have a relationship, like as if they're following you and you're following them, as such. So we can create a list with our different terms that we want to search for on YouTube or on Twitter. And then what we can do is, so we have our terms list, and this has 3 different terms: follow back, YouTube, and then F for F. So tweets that contain these separate terms will be able to pull from. And then after that, we have to come in here, and we have Q equals, so that's going to be our search query, and we're going to use random. But the way we have to use random is we first have to import those functions. So something I should have probably done at the very start is, when you're using Tweepy, you have to import the module into your Python script, because obviously the Python library does not know that you're using the Tweepy library. So at the top of your script, we're going to write import Tweepy, and then also, since we're using the random library, we're going to import rand. Okay, so now that we have rand, we can make a new term, and we can just write query, and we can do random.choice, or maybe it's random.choice, and then in here we can just write terms. Okay, so now we can do Q equals query. So basically, now what's going to happen is we are creating a list called terms, and then with the query, which is what we're going to be searching, it's going to be picking one term out of these 3, and then we'll run the search, and what we'll return is this search list. This will return a list, which is basically one of these, but will contain 25 tweets, the most recent 25 tweets in English, containing the term that we searched for. So this is going to find new tweets under our hashtags or search terms. Okay, so once we have our tweets, we want to like those new tweets. But maybe we want to set some restrictions in this case. For example, there's a bunch of spammers on Twitter. So, as I said, we could add at any point in time to this. We're going to write like new tweets only if the user has more than 100 followers. So, since this search term returns 25 tweets, we're going to write a for loop, which basically says for tweet, because we want to be specific, in search. And now this is going to open basically a loop that will search every tweet in our list. We can say if tweet.author, whoops, tweet.author, let me refer back to, it's user, tweet.user, here we go. If tweet.user.followers_count is less than 100, then we can just continue. We'll skip that user. I believe that's what we can do. Correct. Okay. So if their follower count is less than 100, then we will just skip them completely. Okay, so after that, we're going to use a try except function. And what a try except function is basically when you're using Tweepy, you can call certain methods, but potentially, say you search a term, YouTube, and then you follow a certain person or you've liked a certain tweet already before. So you're trying to carry out an action that you've already done. Tweepy doesn't like this, and it'll return an error, and so you'll error out. And we don't want this to happen while we're running our bot over a long period of time. So in this case, what we'll want to do is we'll use a try except function. So when we're going to try whatever is in this, like in this area, and if that doesn't work, then we can print something and say basically, oh, this didn't work. So for example, I can say print error with user plus tweet.user underscore name, possibly. I have to look. Screen name. Okay, so if the follower count is less than 100, then we'll just skip them. Otherwise, we want to run a piece of code, and if it doesn't work, then we print an error statement. And so what that piece of code is going to be liking the new tweet. So we're going to do tweet dot I believe it's create favorite. Let me refer back to, or it's api.create favorite. And then ID equals tweet.id. So when you're using the API to create a favorite, which is basically liking a tweet, you need to give it a parameter which determines what tweet you are liking. So in this example, since we're using this for loop for each tweet in our search, so every tweet that returns a follower count of greater than 100, we will try to like the tweet associated with the ID of that tweet. So this is all coming full circle. So now we're trying to like their tweet, and after that, we can probably pull this in here. No, we'll write that back there. Okay, so next step is follow the user and then mute them. Maybe we want to add some sort of wait between the time that we followed them and we like their tweet and then we follow them, so we're going to add import time to the top of our script. And then we're also going to write time.sleep and then in parentheses 8 for 8 seconds. And then we'll api.create follow, I believe. Let me refer back to my original code. Friendship. Create friendship. That's sweet. And then we're going to do ID equals tweet.user.id. I believe that works. Yep, that works. All right. So after we follow them, then we'll do, we'll do this 6, and we'll do another 3 seconds afterward, and we can create a mute. Whoops. And you can see I'm just copying and pasting the same stuff. Yep, API create mute, it works the same way. I'm sorry, I'm referring back to my original code. I just don't want this to automatically fail right off the bat. Okay. So, after that, we follow the user and then we mute them. That's all written here. The next step is to store their name and then save it somewhere we can look back at it. So when we're storing their name, we're going to want to store just their username, because if we store the object, then we're storing a list, and that's just a bunch of work, in my own opinion. So what we're going to do is we need to create another list. And where can we write this? Maybe we'll write it up here. And this will be like our do not touch lists. And we'll basically say who's followed us, or we'll write who we followed. Yeah. This will be who we followed, and this will be who we're friends with. These will be the people that follow us back, that we don't want to necessarily unfollow yet, because if you follow someone and then unfollow them immediately, some people like track their followers, and I mean, I've just experienced this in my own use of Twitter, that someone will unfollow you rather much sooner if you unfollow them back, or if you unfollow them after following them for any period of time, like super frequent or super recent. So we have our followed list. So these are going to be the people that we followed. We have our friends. These are going to be the people that have followed us back. And then we'll also create a list of liked tweets. So for liked tweets, in my personal experience, if you unlike someone's tweet, it's not the end of the world. But this might be something that you want to have on a separate timer of when you go on liking everyone's tweet compared to when you go to unfollowing everyone. So that's just something to keep in mind. So let's go back to where we were. So we need to store their name, and then we'll save it. So we want to add the user that we're following to our followed list. So to do that, we'll use the followed. This is the name of our list, and we can add the append, and we can add a object, and the object will be tweet.user.screen_name, and this will return a string, and we'll add the string of their username to our followed list. Okay. And additionally, we'll also add liked.append tweet.id, and this should just add the number value of their tweet. So to reference back what we've created so far, we're going to check the 25 tweets under these 3 search terms, and if they have more than 100 followers, we're going to favorite their tweet or like their tweet, wait 6 seconds, follow them, wait 3 more seconds, mute them, and then add them to our followed list and our liked list, so that we can refer back to them later if we ever want to undo those actions. And if anything fails, then we'll just automatically print to we'll print to our console. Okay, so the next step in our script, while I would like to go ahead and test this, putting in all of our access codes is a bunch of work, and maybe we can actually save that for a second video. So we can go through and follow and do these 3 steps: unfollow users that don't follow back after 1 hour, save the names of those who follow us back, and then write the list. Actually, we'll save this for episode 2. Well, I guess that is going to be the end of episode 1 today, guys. So this is the first part of basically creating your own Twitter bot. This is basically, anyone can do this. You can start writing Python. I would check out Code Academy if you're just getting started. Other than that, it's basically reading documentation, figuring out how things work together, and just writing your own goddamn code. So that's going to end it for this one, and I will probably make a part 2 pretty soon. So it was fun working with you guys on this Twitter bot, and we'll wrap it all up in a part 2 soon. Thanks and goodbye.